I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call?
Good afternoon. Erasmo Villarreal,
Present.
Jorge Dominguez,
Present.
Rafael Núñez, Abraham Lugo,
Present.
Johnny Narvaez,
Present.
Rafael Ugalde,
Is that Rafael Ugalde or Raúl Ugalde?
Raúl, ¿no?
Raúl,
Don't worry, I've been called worse. Present.
sorry, George Beckelheimer, once again, George Beckelheimer,
Oh, sorry, present. Present.
Carlos Flores,
Present.
Jose Tellez.
Present.
For the record, Mr. Sherman, you have quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item that we have is the consideration of the approval of the minutes of the meeting of May the 7th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of 5/7/2020. I'll second the motion.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Can I
right.
ask that when you make a motion or you make a second that you please state your name for the record?
Jorge Dominguez, second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Those against? Unheard, the motion carries. Next item that we have is, do we have any citizens' comments at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if you can give it about a minute, there's a 30-second lag with the live Swagit Spectrum Channel 1300 that the city uses to broadcast this. And while we're doing that, just a reminder again that if you're not muted, when you're not speaking, could you please mute? Because that will eliminate the echo that you hear. So don't take it offensively, don't take any offense, but I'll mute you if you're not muted just to keep the audio clear. So you might have to unmute
Perfect.
yourself when you speak.
Very good. Okay, we're ready to go?
Yes, if at any time citizens call in, then one of our planners, Jason and Osa, will let us know that we've got somebody on the phone.
Okay, good. All right, so we have public hearings and recommendations of an ordinance. The first one, we have the amending of the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 20, block 1, Loop Subdivision Phase 4, from B4 Highway Commercial to R1 Single Family. This is a public hearing. Anybody who wishes to speak? Do we have anybody in the line that wishes to speak in favor or against?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. This is Rafael Vidaurri. I have Mr. Oscar Castillo on behalf of Pewa Consulting on the line. Oscar, Oscar, please state your name and address the commission.
Rafa, before we get started, Mr. Chairman, can I, if you would like, I have the presentation prepared.
Of course, go right ahead.
Okay, Rafa, can you mute and I'll do the presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the applicant is QRS Ventures, Inc., Edward Beckelheimer, and owner applicant PUA Consulting. Oscar Castillo is representing. He's on the line waiting. This is Loop Subdivision Phase 4, B4 to R1, single family residential. We had 0, 4, and 0 against those that were mailed out. Here you can see a general aerial. near the airport, east of the airport, excuse me. Here's a zoom in. This one and the next one are going to be very similar. These were lots that one is developed, one is not already, and they were just kind of, there wasn't.
Can we make a motion to combine them both since they're both similarly situated for the convenience of time?
Well, we can go through them quickly. I think you have to treat zoning cases individually.
Yeah, you do. You do. Yeah.
So very
Go ahead,
quickly, they just were left out. Our recommendation is support. Our recommendation is that you send a positive recommendation to council.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your presentation. Oscar?
Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, Oscar Castillo with Power Consulting for the record. I'm for the rezoning. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. Yeah, we are for the rezoning. I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anybody on the commission for Mr. Castillo? All right. Is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak either for or against?
Yes, Commissioner, we have somebody on the line. Ms. Adriana Galvan.
All right.
Okay, Ms. Galvan, I'm going to go ahead and forward you, okay? So introduce your name and then for or against. Here you go.
Now, Jason, are you sure that this is for this zone case?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Galvan,
Yes,
can you hear her?
yes, I can hear.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Hello?
Go ahead, Ms. Galvan.
Okay, no, this is Adriana Galvan. My concern is that if that area is made from commercial to residential, that the citizens or the people that live in that area are never going to get their entrance into that subdivision that they were promised when they bought. So when people bought that in that subdivision, they were promised an entrance and nothing has happened. And we're concerned that if we do change this to residential, all it means is that house is going to get built and we're never going to get our exit out of there that we were promised.
Okay. All right. Kirby, can somebody address that particular comment?
Yes, we can. The access and the transportation for this subdivision was determined by the plat and the master plan, and there was never a connection there at Sinatra that was meant to happen. So nothing is going contrary to the plans that were presented.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Galvan, did you hear that response?
No, I didn't hear that.
You want to chime that one more time, Kirby?
Yeah.
Or-
Well, can
Yes,
somebody just,
You can,
Go ahead.
Jason, you can relay that to her off the
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay. Ms. Galvan?
Yes, I'm having a hard time hearing. I can hear, I guess, from far away. But another concern is now that they closed that turnaround in front of the airport where we were having to go through that shopping center, now we have to go all the way to Saunders. So that's like a 3-mile delay from where we were going in. The entrance and the exit from that subdivision is a hazard. It's dangerous in that we can only exit and we can turn to the right. If we want to get home, we have to go all the way to Saunders. So I want to know what is the plan for us?
Jason, if you could explain to her off the conversation here that that's an issue not related to this zoning case.
Gotcha. Okay, Ms. Galvan?
Well, that's an,
You're going to hear part of it through the 30-second delay, but what they were saying is that there was no initially designed exit for that area.
Jason, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
okay.
I'm trying to mute it. Correct, but in the original design, there was no, when they submitted their plans, there was no proposed exit right there.
All right. Is there anybody else on the line, Kirby?
No, we can just take one call at a time, so it is.
So we'll have to wait till he finishes with her.
Yes.
All right, and we'll go ahead and wait.
When he's on the line, if somebody calls him while he's on the line, we'll hear it ringing. And so nobody else is ringing in. And so I'm
Okay.
assuming there's nobody else waiting to talk.
Okay, all right. If that's the case and there's no other citizen or any other comments on this particular zoning case, what are the wishes of the commission?
Correct, on District 5.
Mr. Chairman,
What
if
are
you,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the zone change and follow staff recommendation. This is Commissioner
Okay,
Ugalde.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Give me your email.
Commissioner Rice, second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Anybody who's opposed?
18.
I abstain, Mr. Chairman.
I will send you
You're
the
abstaining. Very good.
members and
All right.
who they represented on. either the planning-
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you to take just a couple minute, very quick break? We're having an issue with Jason's, he's not able to mute himself. And we just need to fix that really quick and it will help us move forward. Can we just take a couple
All
minutes?
right.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine.
And Osmo, I have a suggestion. The rest of the zone changes, yes, they're being taken individually, of course, but but staff is in favor of all of them, correct?
That is correct.
So maybe we lead off with if there's anybody that opposes it, because then if there's not, can we just move right into a vote?
Well, by law, we've got to allow comments for or against. So, but yet,
We're getting close to the end of it.
No, understood. But that way the person who's speaking for can just say.
I got what you're saying. We can go ahead and I can ask for that. I can ask for anybody who's against to speak first. Surely.
Okay.
Yeah. We can do it.
Okay, we're ready to keep moving. Sorry
All
about
right,
that.
then,
Apologize. Little technical difficulty.
All right, so we've already taken a vote on that. The motion carries. Moving into the next item, this is item B, amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 1, block 1, the Loop subdivision from B4 to R1A. Okay?
Yes, that's correct.
Kirby, you want to go?
Very similar to the last one. This one is north of that property. This one already had a home built on it. The assumption was that it was part of the R1A residential zoning. So it was just what looks to be a mistake in our cartography. So we
Right.
support this
Okay.
change.
All right, is there anybody on the line who wants to speak against this particular zone change? Nobody's on the line who wants to speak against it. Is there somebody who wants to speak for it?
Mr. Chairman, I do have Oscar Castillo from PEO Engineering in favor of the item, and he's here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the engineer?
No.
Not heard, then what are the wishes of the commission?
Make a motion to close public hearing, support staff recommendation, and approve the zone change.
Second that motion,
We have a
Commissioner Ugalde.
And a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion carries. Next item is item C, amending the zoning ordinance City of Laredo by rezoning lots 21, 22, 23, and 24, Block 1, EG Business Park Phase 2, located at 334, 338, 340, 344 Veterans Boulevard from B3 to B4. Kirby?
Yes, sir.
your
This is a zone change request to go from B3 Community Business District to B4 Highway Community District. Just a reminder, can we have anybody who's not speaking to mute their mic? Thank you. The proposed use here is warehouse storage, and that's going to be important. I'll address in a second. Warehouse storage with also a contractor's office. We sent out 11 letters, got 0 against,
The conversation.
0 for.
Just give me 1 second. Let me get sure I got the audio.
Okay, excuse me, sorry there. The general location, this is on Veterans Boulevard, just off 359. And you can see the 4 lots here are undeveloped, and they're surrounded on both sides by, here's an aerial view. The white is area that is not in city limits, so that's in unincorporated county. The current zoning of this area is B3, R18 to the south. A little larger area of the zoning, I know the colors are different, but this is an area of B3, it's M1 to the north, and then R1 and R18 to the south, and then unincorporated around it. Now that unincorporated is a mix of residential and what appears to be light industrial storage. Staff does not support this zone change. Now that's different than what was in the staff report. That was an error, and I'm going to explain why. The proposed zone change is not in conformance with the future land use for this area, which is neighborhood mixed use. And the proposed use of warehouse in the storage would be appropriate, but that's something, depending on what type of storage they want to do, is already permitted in the B3. And what they're proposing to do, which is to do warehouse and office, that could be done in M1 zoning. By going to the B4 zoning, we're also permitting things like bars and macanitas, which would not be a fit in this area. B4 is reserved for highway. It's called the highway commercial zone because it's meant to be along major corridors, which this is not. It's surrounded by other B1. It's got residential nearby, and so this would not be a good location for B4. And because of those reasons, we are not supporting the proposed zone change. Here's the proposed motion and the number if you wish to open the public hearing.
On that yellow card. Yes.
Can you put back?
Commissioner Villarreal, sorry, you were cut out there for just a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you put back the actual screen where you showed the city limits lines and there you go, that one right there. So right now, on that aerial that you showed us, you had some, I think some residential to the west, if I'm not mistaken. To the east, is that all vacant property? Yes, right?
To the north and south, the other lots there are vacant, but to the east and west, it's residential, but there's also some storage there as well. I mean, it's mostly residential.
So the applicant is asking to do, did you say, I think I heard you say it was warehousing and office spaces. Is that
On the
correct?
application, the applicant stated, and the applicant's on the line, they can answer more, but on the application, they stated commercial. When we asked for more details, they said warehouse storage and a contractor's office. Now, depending on what type of storage, they can already do this storage and contractor's office in the B3. But if they're, depending on the type of storage, they might have to go to an
I got you. Okay, well, let me open up the, anybody who's on the line who wants to speak, I guess. This time I'm going to start in favor of it since you do have the owner on there. You can answer some questions to the commission. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I do have Mr. Oscar Castillo from PEWA Consulting on the line. Oscar, go ahead.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. I'm here for the zone change and here to answer any questions. I understand there's some questions, but I couldn't hear them very well.
Oscar, the question that everybody has is, okay, this is, you want to change to a B4 to do warehousing and a construction office. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
okay.
This is just
what kind of
Okay.
What kind of warehousing are you proposing?
You know, it's just for, it's actually, it's to, the owner, he's a contractor, he's a painter contractor, and mainly he's just gonna store, he doesn't do any painting there or anything, he just wanna store his materials there and everything inside, and, you know, like, I don't know, all his equipment and paint and that's about it. And I understand his wife is a bookkeeper and she wants to also put the office there. And I know that can be done on B3, but the warehousing and with inside the storage needs the B4.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Castillo from the commission?
Well, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Castillo, that's pretty vague. The contents are the contents of the warehouse for storage that are going to require B4. Is that what you're saying?
Could you repeat the question, Rafael?
Absolutely. Oscar, the question from the commission is the type of materials that are being proposed to be stored would only be allowed in a B4. That was the question.
No, what is only allowed on the B4 is the warehouse with the storage inside.
Okay.
I don't think you have the land use, but you cannot have it on the B3, you need the B4.
All right, let me ask a quick question here. Kirby,
Yes.
what Oscar's saying is that in a B3, we cannot have a warehouse, and I'm not sure if I understood him correctly, to store the painting. I think I heard it was a painting contractor, but that he can't store his stuff in the facility in a B3?
If you,
What you guys heard?
with
I know
more,
our communications is kind of tough right now.
yes, with more clarity on what they're planning to store and how they're planning to set that up, we'd be able to advise them better. But if they're going to do storage, let me pull it up real quick, and maybe I can get to that detail.
Mr. Chairman, wouldn't this be a CUP thing? Leave it B3 and then they detail what it is they want to do, and then they get a CUP, or guide us on this.
So that would be a better option, or getting an M1, which there already is in the area, would allow them to do storage. Either way, a conditional use permit would allow them to stay the current zoning, and then they would have an approved use that's more intense, typically allowed in the next zone up, but doesn't allow them to do everything. Problem with the B4, if you say yes to a B4, you're saying yes to a lot of very intense uses that are meant to be right next to a highway, not in the middle of an area that's low density, residential and other uses.
So Kirby, let me ask you a real quick question. We had an M1 zoning directly to the north of them. Is that correct for this property?
No, not directly to the north. On 359, let me go back a couple slides.
Yeah.
You can see on 359, on the other side of 359, you have a B4, and then further away to the east, you have a B4 on the same side of 359. But all of those B4s are adjacent to 359, which is one of the requirements of the B4 zone, that it be.
No, I understand, but I guess what I'm getting at, Kirby, is that we have M1 directly on the right north of this property. I mean, in between the property, we got B3 abutting an M1. That's what we got.
Yes, M1 is our suggestion.
Yeah, I see what we got. All right. I think really at this point, based on how the area develops, it might be in the best interest to, Oscar, if you're on the line, it might be in the best interest to see if you can get a CUP for this thing.
Hello?
Yes, Oscar, go ahead.
So could you explain what the options are, Rafael?
Certainly. So
Is correct to go to an M1?
right. So the options are the M1 zone, or as well as the conditional use.
So would you guys support the M1?
Yes, we would be supportive of an M1, yes, but that would require you to do another application. What we would want to do is, we wouldn't want them to deny you in this one, otherwise you wouldn't be able to come back for 6 months, but to table it and then allow you to yourself enter another application, allow it to go through the process and come back.
Okay. You know, I went to the B4 because I thought it was less intrusive, and we have B3, and the C, you know, like on the, it's a little, I don't know, surprising to me because you supported the B4, and then when you see what they were gonna do, even though it's allowed on a B4, that's when you're saying, okay, then I don't support it. So I don't understand that logic. I respect it, but I don't understand it. And honestly, I will have to follow the recommendation of tabling because I really don't know that I think the M1 will be better for my client, but it'll give him more options. But I was trying to, but I really don't like to postpone it. But
Oscar, the B4 zone, and Rafa, you can explain to him, that was a mistake that staff supported it. But ultimately, the decision isn't made by staff. We just give a recommendation. And our recommendation should have not been to support that B4. Now, if he wants to continue with the B4 and the planning commission here denies that, then your client will have to wait 6 months before they come back with another application. However, if you table it and change it to an M1, staff will support it, and you know, you can ask the commissioners whether they're more supportive of an M1. But to us,
Mr. Chairman,
it doesn't make sense.
I have a comment. Raul.
Yes, sir, go ahead. Commissioner Ugalde.
So why do we have to have the applicant go back and change it and come back 2 weeks? I mean, why can't, as a commission, just approve a M1?
Because he's the representative, he's not the owner, and we'd be making that decision without the owner.
Well, can you get the owner on the line? Because I'm sure if I'm the owner, I don't want to be delayed 2-3 weeks.
But I thought that was the whole point of having a representative, is the representative speaks on behalf of the owner before the commission.
Exactly.
I mean, if that's the case, we shouldn't even have representatives. We should make the owners speak for themselves.
That's right.
If we're going to obligate owners to actions or inactions of their representatives, we should allow the representatives to make amendments on the fly.
That's why there's agents of owners.
I want to make a comment real quick.
Yes.
I think as a commission, we should just do the M1 and approve it now, and not have this person wait another 2 weeks. Time is money, especially now.
Yo soy Bañez. Yo creo que aquí ya todos acordamos que el B4 no es necesario y no es procedente. El mismo presentador, Oscar Castillo, dijo que está bien, que él se equivocó en el B4. Pero si queremos dar un desarrollo para acelerar que los negocios avancen, yo sí aceptaría la propuesta de Ugalde. Si existe igual el mismo ánimo, el mismo sentido de que todos podamos autorizar un M1, pues hacer esto más diligente. No veo por qué hay que retrasarlo mucho. Encontrar la forma de que ahorita se apruebe y se dejen los minutos ahí asentados, que todos estuvimos de acuerdo. Y si el mismo Castillo ofrece que acepte el M1, pues con eso nos vamos. Si no, vamos a volverlo a listar, vamos a volver a pedir el tiempo, cuando yo estoy sintiendo que todos estamos de acuerdo que se equivocó en la aplicación y que es un M1 lo que él quiere y lo que él necesita. Y lo que también el vecindario ahí necesita es un M1. No lo vamos a hacer con eso. Yo estoy de acuerdo con Ugalde, gracias.
Okay. Well, can you translate that, Rafa, for Kirby?
Sure, absolutely. So Kirby, the Commissioner Dueñas was stating that the consensus of the commission at this point appears to be to looking or exploring the M1 and also to give the applicant the benefit of not having to, for there to be any delays in having to resubmit another application from going to a B3 and an M1 and continue with the process now for the commission to go forward and vote for an M1 at this time, if that's also okay with the applicant.
Well, the planning commission is sending a recommendation on this application to city council. So
Right.
you don't have the authority to change the application here.
No, but we can always amend the application and amend the recommendation to city council. At the end of the day, all we do are make recommendations. We never.
You can certainly make that recommendation that this be given a
Amended.
amended to be an M1. Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
Just a minute. Hold on a little bit. Let me just ask one other question. Is there anybody else on the line who may want to speak against this?
Very important.
Do we have anybody on the line? Anybody else who wants to speak on this item?
No, nobody else.
Nobody else. All right, Joey, go ahead.
Let me make Mr. Chairman, I have a comment I need to make real quick.
All right.
I haven't had a chance, so we have before us a B4 that was that the client and the representative was led to believe that it was going to be approved by staff, and I personally, as a commissioner, I was led to believe that it was going to be approved. I think, in all fairness, we should approve the B4, Mr. Chairman. The engineer had worked and had.
You're talking about the B4 or the M1?
I think the B4 it's the one that is before us, and the B4 should be approved because that's what is supported by staff. So in order for us
to no, staff is not supporting. He's not supporting. They changed their support. They're not supporting the B4.
Well, they're not supporting it right now, but on the public documentation that was filed, they were supporting that. So
they corrected themselves and said that they had made a mistake. So they're not supporting it. So I mean, that's the way it is right now.
The reasoning, Commissioner, can
I have Joey Diaz?
Okay, the reason I'm making the motion is because staff is saying that they would support the change from B3 to M1. And so rather than make them go through the whole process of reapplying, I want to make a motion to close public hearing, go against staff's recommendation, and recommend to city council that rather than it be from a B3 to a B4, that it go directly from a B3 to an M1, which would have received staff's support if that had been the original application. And that's what staff was saying.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I second the motion. This is Ugalde.
Ugalde seconds the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Yes.
Well, I just had a quick question though. So first of all, this is legal. There's precedent that the official application that we can amend it. We can amend it ourselves to a different zone, even though the applicant didn't request it in their official submission. That's all legal.
The commission can make obviously our is just a recommendation to the city council. Okay. So that's all we're doing is we're making a recommendation, and that's all we're doing here, and that's why we have a motion and a second. But that's all we're doing is a recommendation The ultimate body that can approve a zone change will be your city council.
I have a comment.
Sure, Abby.
This is Commissioner Lugo. I'm okay with moving forward because I guess the question here is if the representative and the owner have the intent to and will inadvertently move to submit an application for an M1, and that's why I agreed to with the rest of the commissioners to move forward and approve and amend. And just to clarify, we do so because the intent of the representative and the owner will inadvertently be an M1, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's more of a question to Oscar, Mr. Castillo, but my understanding was the applicant would have preferred to have an M1, but they chose a B4 because it was not as intrusive. And then with staff saying they're against the B4, but they would have been in favor of an M1. That's why I'm making the motion I'm making.
Can I just make a comment that makes no sense at all to...
I understand, but...
Not your part, sorry. That just makes no sense why the city would be opposed to one but not the other.
Well, that's besides the point, Carlos, and I agree with you.
Okay.
And then I think we should just give the B4.
The intensity is too high, Carlos.
Hold on, guys. We have a motion and a second.
Let's vote.
We're ready to vote on it. We're ready to vote on the motion. All
Yes.
those in favor of the motion,
Aye.
signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
anybody who wants to vote against the motion, signify by saying
Carlos is voting against.
I am
Who is
voting
Carlos
against.
We have Commissioner Dominguez and Commissioner Flores voting against. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct.
All right.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, I think that what we're doing is not something that we have the power to do. That's why I'm voting against it,
All
just
right.
for the record.
So right now I've got 2 against and I've got, how many for? Let's see. You got 5-4, right? Is that right, Kirby? 5 in favor and 2 against and
That's
1 abstention. Are you abstaining, George? No, you're in favor of it, right?
Yes.
All right. So then that 6-2 vote, the motion passes. All right, next item.
Okay, item five.
Amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 1, block 6, Riverside subdivision located at 317 Masterson Road from R3 to B1. Kirby, go ahead.
Yes, sir. This is, as you mentioned, at the location in R3 to B1. This is for a sign manufacturing use. This and the next zone cases are related. The applicant is basically doing the current use now and wants to expand it. In order to do that, he has to become legal conforming. And so the first thing he's going to do is come up to a higher intent zone and then get a conditional use permit for this use that is even up a zone higher. So instead of going up 2 zones, he's asking to move up 1 zone and then get a conditional use permit for that single use of sign manufacturing. This is located on the south side of the city. Here's an aerial view showing the property. It is here's a view of the property, a street view. You can see some of the signs that they're working on or have worked on in the past. This is currently an R3 zone, and it's surrounded by R3 by residential. But as we stated previously, this is something that they've been doing there for a while. High density residential is what the future land use calls for. Staff is supportive of this, even though it doesn't conform with the surrounding zones and doesn't conform with the future land use. The reality is that this use has been there for a long time, and allowing them to expand slightly, but allowing them to expand would also require them to come into compliance with all the city standards that have been adopted since they began their use there. And that particularly important would be, as part of their plan, that they have the proper fencing, lighting, and parking requirements, all things that they would have to come into compliance with, which would be better for their neighbors. So here is the proposed motion. that you send staff's recommendation that you send a positive recommendation to council.
All right, is there anybody on the line who wishes to speak in favor or against?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. For the record, I have Mr. Abraham Gonzalez of South Texas Neon on the line for any questions for the commission. Mr. Gonzalez, you may address the commission, sir.
Well, no, I just wanted to emphasize that South Texas, the business has been there long before this became residential, and it's been continuously used for the sign business since it was open there. They reviewed 17 different items. We're okay with all those points so that we can continue. Luckily, our business has grown, so we need to expand a little bit so that we can continue to grow and service the community of Laredo, Texas. So we don't have a problem with the 17 items that they gave us this morning. All of those we're willing to comply with to be able to do this expansion.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak for or against? Is there anybody else on the line?
If there is, we would alert you.
Okay, so there's nobody else on the line. All right. Okay, what are the wishes of the commission?
I move to close public hearing and recommend approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Lugo, second.
I'll second the motion.
All right. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
George Beckelheimer.
I made the second.
Bring a second.
Mr. Lugo made the second.
Thank you.
Anybody who votes against this item? Not hearing anything, the motion carries. Next item is the amending of the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit for sign manufacturing at Lot 1, Block 6. This is the same item. Is there anybody on the line who wishes to speak against the item? All right, if there is nobody, do we have a motion? Or does anybody have any questions on the special use permit?
I move to close public hearing and recommend approval. Beckelheimer.
Second the motion, Jorge Dominguez.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody against? Okay, motion carries then. Next item we have is amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lots 1, 2, and 3, block 208 Eastern Division, located at 1602 South Meadow, from B1 to B3. Kirby.
Yes, sir. This is like on slope. Can you hear me?
This is the item that had the parking issue.
And here's a view of the aerial. Here's a street view of the property. And as you can see, they're currently in a B1 zone, seeking a B3. There is B3 across the street, and they are neighboring B4 along Meadow Avenue. Here's the future land use map indicating neighborhood mixed use. The staff supports the proposed zone change. It's in conformance with the future land use map, which neighborhood mixed use includes all zones except the higher intensity zones. So what they're proposing would fall into that. And the proposed use of auto sales is compatible with the other uses along Meadow Avenue in this area. Here is the proposed motion.
Okay. All right. Do we have anybody on the line who wants to speak for or against the zone change?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. For the record, I do have Adrian Golarte, the owner, and he's ready to address the commission. Go ahead, Mr. Golarte, you are live.
Yes, sir. I was looking for a zone change on my property on 1600 Meadow, and this was one of the requisites that you all asked me to do. We were, apart from the corona deal, we were supposed to meet there. So I'm not sure now how this procedure goes, but I was asking for a zone change. All around us are car lots, and we wanted to open up a car lot. And, you know, it was previously zoned for commercial, and at some point, I guess when I bought the property, it got changed the zone. So we're just asking for it to go back for that.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Golarte from the commission? All right. Thank you, Mr. Golarte. Is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak in favor of this item or against this item? Nobody else is on the line?
No, no, sir.
All right. Okay, what are the wishes of the commission?
I move that we close the public hearing and recommend approval. This is Beckelheimer.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Who seconds the motion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody against? All right, motion carries. Next
Who
item,
seconded the motion?
Sorry?
Mr. Dueñas.
Who seconded?
Rafael Dueñas.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, item G, amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning lot 51, block 1, North Point Hill subdivision located at 249 North Point Drive from RO to B1. All right, Kirby?
Yes, sir. As you stated, here is the aerial showing it's just off Calle del Norte Road. Here's a zoom in. You can see the property. It accesses both the corner of North Point and Calle del Norte. There's multiple entrances, exits. Here is a street view of the property. They are seeking to do a child care facility here for more than 13, a category of use that requires the zoning that they're seeking. Currently it is RO, but they are seeking B1, commercial. Here's the future land use map showing that the plan for this area is as neighborhood mixed use. Staff support this zone change. It's in conformance with the future land use map, and it's also compatible with uses in the area. Here's the proposed motion.
Okay. All right. This is a public hearing. Do we have anybody on the line who wishes to speak for or against the item?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rafael Vidaurri. I have been unsuccessful in locating the applicant, Ms. Genoveva Padilla. If it pleases the commission, I'd like to keep trying to get a hold of her.
Well, I think at this point, if she's not there ready to go, I think, and there's nobody else on the line who wishes to speak on this item, Rafael?
Anybody against?
Nobody again.
I'm sure they're going to be in favor of it. So with nobody else on the line to speak, what are the wishes of the commission?
I
have a question.
I move that we close the public hearing and recommend approval. Beckelheimer?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second motion, Ugalde.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there anybody against the motion? All right, motion carries. Next item, amending the zoning ordinance of the city of Laredo by rezoning approximately 5.955 acres out of Porción 35, located at north of Bianca Lane and west of Loop 20 from R1 to R1A. Okay, Kirby?
Yes, the proposed use is slightly higher density, single-family residential. 5 letters were sent out. We received 0 for and 0 against. You see the property is located on the east side, just off of Cuatro Vientos Boulevard. Currently, the property is undeveloped. Here's a street view of the property. Currently, the property is R1A. Excuse me, it's R1, and they're seeking R1A. There's R1A, as you can see, to the west and to the north. This is neighborhood mixed use on the future land use plan. Here's a proposal of the property. The neighboring property adjacent to the west is R1A, and they want to bring this area to the same zoning so they can continue the same type of development across the property that they own. Staff is supportive of the proposed zone change. It's in conformance with the future land use plan for this area, and it's compatible with the uses in the area. Here's the proposed motion.
Okay. All right. Do we have anybody on the line who wishes to speak for or against this item?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I have Wayne Nance from Porras Engineering on the line. Go ahead, Wayne.
Rafa has,
this is Wayne. We're in favor of this motion. The area lends itself to R1A. It's surrounded by it. And we look forward to you supporting this motion as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anybody else on the line who wishes to speak for or against?
None at this time.
All right, then what are the wishes of the commission?
I move that we close public hearing and recommend approval. Mr. Chairman, this is Beckelheimer.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? And a
Second, Davis.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody against the motion? Motion carries, then thank you. The next item, amending the zoning ordinance map of the city of Laredo by repealing ordinance 2012-0084, rezoning lot 4, block 666, Eastern Division, located at 1219 East Bustamante Street from an R3 to a B1. Yes, sir, Kirby.
yes, the proposed use here is retail or medical supplies. 21 letters were mailed out. We received 0 for and 0 against. You can see in the general area, located near McPherson Road, just off Bustamante. And here's a zoomed in area, a street view of the current.
Is that, are they selling medical supplies from there already?
They should not be, but they in the past, this was being operated as office and not retail.
Okay.
So for retail, they'd need the proposed use or zone that they're proposing. So they are currently R3, they're proposing B1. You can see the zoning for this area is R3, high density residential, and that's what the future land use map calls for. As staff, we're supporting this. The property currently holds a conditional use permit for grocery store and professional offices. That's how they're able to do the office space that they're renting. If this zone change is passed, that'll be repealed. Although not in conformance with the comprehensive plan's designation as high density, it is compatible with the surrounding uses. And there's B1 in the area and similar retail sales in the area. And of course, it'll have to comply, if it moves to that zoning, it'll have to comply with the standards for commercial next to residential. So there are fencing, parking, and lighting requirements they'll have to conform to. Here's the proposed motion.
All right. Do we have anybody who on the line who wants to speak for or against this?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I have Mr. Ernesto Ibarra, the applicant, and Mr. Ibarra, go ahead and address the commission, sir.
Rafa, just as a default, can you just let the applicant know if they have any questions for them instead of, there's no need to address them automatically. We're just there if, in case the planning commission needs to address.
Very well, sir.
Needs to have questions answered.
Okay.
Mr. Ibarra.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Ibarra, if there's any questions of the commission at this time, they'll be asked of you.
Okay, I'll be here.
Does anybody in the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Dominguez. Why a B1? Why not a special use permit for that area? It seems that we have residential throughout. And we're putting a B1 there. Opening the B1 doesn't guarantee that that they're going to be selling what they're selling right now, but actually it is opening the options to change the type of business they're going to have in the future. So I would support a special use permit that would kind of put them legalize their type of a business, but giving them a B1 for medical, which it shouldn't even be on a B1. That's my comment to the applicant and
Well,
to you.
yes, staff, we can help answer that question a little better. Retail sales of medical supplies should be in a B1, and there's B1 next to them, and B1 across the street, and B3 nearby. Having to have the applicant can always ask for another special use permit every time the person who's leasing changes. It's better to designate something for that use if it's clear that it's compatible with the uses surrounding. And it's staff's recommendation that it is. If you disagree, however, you can zone it how you see fit, or you can send a recommendation how you see fit.
Okay, thank you for your explanation, Kirby. Any other questions from the commissioners? Do we have anybody else on the line who may want to speak against the proposed zone change?
None at this time.
All right, none heard. What are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion, this Commissioner Ugalde, to approve the zone change.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Ugalde. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Lugo, I'll second.
We have a second for Commissioner Lugo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Commissioner, for the record, I'm voting against it. Commissioner Dominguez.
All right, we have one against. Everybody else is in favor, and motion carries. All right. Next item that we have is the consideration of the following preliminary plats and preliminary replats. Number 1, 6A, preliminary consideration of the plat of the Kaledi Industrial Park Phase 4. The intent is industrial. All right, Kirby?
Yes, sir. You've seen this before. It was tabled last time. This is on the north side of town. The applicant has a plat, and the issue of discussion last time was whether or not the planning staff comment to connect General Milton Road and El Gato Road should be kept or not with the comments for this preliminary plat. And you can see that was planning comment number 1. I have a little more to help you with this decision, if you'll permit me. There's 2 areas of our ordinance, and let me just backtrack a little bit here. So there was a master plan that was approved last year in September. I sent everybody a link to the meeting packet and also to the meeting where you could view it on YouTube, a record of the meeting. And at that, when they brought in their master plan, staff recommended that El Gato Road and General Milton Road be connected, and those comments were accepted. So the general plan, there's a requirement that gets submitted to us. Now, I understand there were health issues with the previous engineer. That's most likely why they did not get that back in paper. But what's binding is not what they drew, it's what was accepted at Planning Commission. Now, that's important because if they don't want that road there, the correct process is to first change the master plan and or at least concurrently at the same time change the phase that they're dealing with here, this phase here. And so at minimum, they also need to do that if you decide it really should be done at the same time and not after. But as well, one thing I want to point out with the subdivision ordinance here is that these 2 roads, General Milton Road and El Gato Road, were always meant to continue, and that's how they were able to get built. If you look at the subdivision ordinance, it says that section 32J, dead-end streets designed to be so permanently will be no longer than 500 feet. So there's no way that these roads could have gotten built if the intent was them to permanently end. And anybody that would have looked at the plats, here's the plat for the property just to the west of this property. This shows the road continuing, El Gato Road continuing, and the plat to the north shows General Milton Drive continuing as well. Now, these plats didn't include that property, so obviously that wasn't done yet, but the intent of both of these roads was that General Milton and El Gato Road would continue. Now, I went this week and talked with some of the, because I know some of the discussion was, is this needed or not? Our traffic engineer for the city, who can't be available for this meeting, stated that yes, it definitely is, but I also wanted to ground test that. And I was entirely open to whatever comments that the neighbors would say. I want to read these, they're very quick. From Medline, the plant manager, this is the property directly to the north. They said, we're using the road already. It saves time, avoids traffic. It's an important connection. It also affects safety because it avoids cross-traffic turns on Killam. The property to the southwest, CQ, it would be beneficial. Drivers use it already. Eduardo Cantu, who's the general manager there. And then the property to the west, Paul Lickerman, Intermodal Operations, TCS. He said, having to already deal with traffic congestion due to the street being a dead end, our thought is that any further development requires a street to be put in. This is a must. Working with a cul-de-sac would be crazy as it would magnify the congestion problems we already have. And then I just want to show you, while we were driving there, we weren't there long, but while we went through, this is a view of a tractor trailer using General Milton Road. You can see them facing south. So this is looking north on General Milton, or towards General Milton Road on that dirt path, just showing you that tractor trailers are using this road already, as stated by the neighboring industrial users there. So here's the proposed motion. As before, we're asking for all the comments to be adopted.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the planning director. So yes, the adjacent properties, including the large one to the west, why wasn't, in other words, why leave a small piece of land to shoulder the burden and to the tune of 20% of loss of land and full cost? Why don't the other landowners chip in when those plats are done? It seems illogical to leave a small piece of land and say, okay, whoever's going to develop this, we're going to give it to them. So if it's a really need to have, then the city needs to pony up and purchase the land and have the street made under their cost. It would seem to me.
I'm happy to answer that, but just want to for good practice, if Commissioner Beckelheimer, if you're planning to abstain from voting, it would also be appropriate to abstain from commenting on this item as well.
Well, I would incorporate his question then.
Okay, well, no problem. I'm very happy to answer the question. The way that we build in Laredo is that if you have development that encompasses a road, that you're responsible for building the road. That is the way that we do it. That's the way that, there's different ways to do it, and that's definitely in the plans in the future. But the current way that we build roads is if your parcel incorporates that you should include that is your responsibility. Now, this one property that they're looking at is only a small part of a much larger master plan that encompasses a much larger area. So to look at this individually and to say, to guess any number of how much this costs them, by percent or by project would not be, I think, accurate.
But wasn't the amendment that was made in April of 2019, okay, they amended it solely to put a big sign, basically, a big billboard. Prior to then, am I correct in assuming that the master plan never had this road and none of the conditions were having this road, correct?
That's correct, because they didn't have intent to develop this part of the property.
Oh, no, it was part of the master plan. So when somebody submits a master plan to develop a piece of property, it's assumed that all of it's going to get developed. Otherwise, they wouldn't submit a master plan, right?
Right. That's why at that time we said.
But prior to April of 2019, there was never a requirement of connecting General Milton and El Gato Road, correct?
Not so far as we can tell on what they submitted.
Okay. And the only time the staff added in that connection was based on an amendment that was solely for amending a different lot just to add like a 1/10 of an acre for a billboard, to change it to a B4. That's really what it was for, right?
It was, the purpose of that was a billboard, yes.
Okay. And not only did the applicant, who the applicants never show up, just like we dealt with earlier in this agenda, the representative was sick, right?
I can't say whether he was sick at that time or not, no.
Well, he died in June of 2019.
Yeah.
And he was a good man, and he always stepped forward and probably would, I would assume, knowing Mr. Mejia, he would have shown up and probably would have objected to you adding on a road that takes out 20% of the property. And now we're holding the landowner to an amendment that was done at the last minute on a modification that really everybody would have approved, but and this is before your time, Kirby, but that type of big modification for a billboard, that's essentially what it was for. I mean, that kind of seems kind of backhanded, doesn't it?
This was always part of the plan. If you look, and this is public knowledge, if anybody would have done their due diligence and looked at these plats, they would have seen that the intent of these roads was always to continue.
No. It was never part of the master plan, though, Kirby. Before April 2019, it was never part of the requirements. They made that easement, and actually it's kind of trespassing, but they've done that on their own.
Yes, but master plans are not created by staff. They're created by applicants, and they're often corrected by staff who put in comments. So
yeah, the only time that staff corrected this, or quote unquote corrected this, was for a billboard. Like that's where we're kind of.
I see where you're coming from.
The job of staff and the city should be to help people, not to have I gotcha moments, kind of like what we had right now with the M1. It should be to tell people this is what we want in the long term. And if we can't throw in these big restrictions when people come in just to put up a billboard, like I don't think it's right to change a master plan for just a billboard. And now we want to hold them to the billboard when their representative was sick and he died 2 months later. It just doesn't seem like fundamental fair play with what our process or our role in the whole situation should be. I just think it's wrong. But that being said, going back to your point, I don't necessarily think that it's necessary, but I'll leave it at that.
If I can provide a response to that, certainly as staff, our job is to provide a recommendation based on the rules. And your job as planning commission is get to make the decision. So whatever decision is made today, it's the planning commission that'll make that decision. But it's our responsibility as staff to look at the rules and to provide a recommendation for you of what is the best practice when we don't have a rule specifically states it, or when the rule specifically states to advise you what the rules are. Now, when we catch that, doesn't make the rule any less valid. The fact that these roads were always required, were always part of the plan, and that staff may have, the previous staff before me, may not have caught it until the last time they submitted the master plan for an update, doesn't make it any less right. It may be something that happened later in the master plan, but it doesn't, either it's right or it's not right. Either that road should be there or it shouldn't be there. When it came out that the road was needed there, to me, it's less of the question than, is it right that a road should be there? Is a road needed there? And was the road always in the plans there? And my answer to those three questions are yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Kirby, let me just go ahead and ask you one thing. I mean, obviously, this is a 5-acre tract. I believe you guys were asking for a 49-foot back-to-back street to go through there. Putting that requirement on a 5-acre tract kills the project. that cost is prohibitive. That doesn't work. So, I mean, in light of looking at these things, we have to look at these things from an economic point of view also to make it, will this make or break a project? When you put that kind of a requirement on a project like this, you just broke a project. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just not feasible. It's not a feasible thing to develop. So what we're going to be left with would probably be the same slum area that is there now. Nothing but a bunch of tires, a bunch of junk trucks that are in there. And the only ones that are using this is a guy who wants to do it for his own convenience, because you've got 7 warehouses on El Gato Road and you've got 3 on General Milton. Those warehouses have been there for a long time, and they knew that their in and outs were El Gato Road and General Milton, not this little shortcut that somebody decided to start using. That's my comment on that. Anybody else have any comments?
Sir, Chairman, if I may, this Commissioner, I agree. I agree with Commissioner.
Let me recognize Commissioner Dominguez first. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree 100% with your comment and Commissioner Tellez's comment. I feel that I speak for myself and for Commissioner Tellez, we agree that the burden shouldn't be vested on the particular developer. And for purposes of time, I'm ready to make a motion to approve deleting the condition by staff. I think that would be more convenient, not only for the community in the area, because as you mentioned, I did visit the area, and it's a trash hole, and it's in the best interest of the community and the owners surrounding that property to be developed promptly and properly. Even though if we base the cost on that particular developer, chances are that part of land might not be developed at all. Wherein at this particular time, we have in our hands what Commissioner Tellez mentioned, when Carlos, my good friend, rest in peace, he actually had already mentioned that they were not going to build that road. So I will make a motion, or I will support a motion that will grant this particular developer the tools necessary to develop that piece of land without having to extend the Milton Road.
So your motion would be to strike comment number 1. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. The motion would be to approve striking comment number 1.
All right. We do have a motion. Do we have a second on that?
Second, Tellez.
We have a second by Mr. Tellez. Is there any further discussion by anybody?
Sí, yo quiero reforzar el comentario, Rafael Dueñas. Quisiera primeramente que levantáramos un poquito el nivel de respeto entre la ciudad y los comisionados. Para mí es enriquecedor que tanto George Beckelheimer, compañero Tellez, Domínguez, me digan sus comentarios. Y no podemos prejuzgar si se van a abstener o van a votar a favor o van a votar en contra. Ellos ya votarán como ellos quieran. Entonces sí me gustaría que esos comentarios personalizados no se pusieran en el récord. Y también quiero sentar en el récord que a mí la calle me parece ociosa, me parece estéril, me parece inútil. Esa calle no es necesaria. El Gato Road hacia abajo choca y da la vuelta hacia Meadow, no sale a las minas. En nada ayudaría a abrir una calle ahí. No le ayudaría a nadie. Yo he platicado con algunos vecinos de las bodegas que son amigos míos y compañeros de trabajo y se sienten más seguros con la calle cerrada, sienten más seguridad en sus negocios. Entonces, no estoy conforme con que se le ponga una carga, y por las razones que ya expresaron y que las quiero confirmar, es inconcebible que un terreno de 5 acres que querramos cortarle el 25% para hacer una calle que no le beneficia a la comunidad en lo absoluto. Eso es un engaño. Si la calle saliera, insisto, de Main Road a Loop 20, funcionaría. Pero la calle que quieren hacer no va a funcionar para nada. Va a funcionar para 2 o 3 camiones y eso no nos ayuda en nada. Entonces, yo estoy de acuerdo con la moción de Mr. Domínguez y gracias, muy amables.
Then let me go ahead and take a vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those who are against signify. None heard, then the motion carries. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain, but I'm going to request a little deep dive by the city attorney to figure out why I have to be abstaining.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you abstained on this one previously, George, sorry.
I did, but you had sent out that, my brother is merely the CFO. He has no ownership interest in these Coletti projects. Yet, people have brought up his names repeatedly over the months because he shows up as an applicant, but he doesn't get a direct financial gain from any of it, which you had actually mentioned in February. But the week before this, 2 weeks ago, that Monday, you sent that reminder about if you have family in the first degree, and you did. I wasn't sure if that was for me or who that was for, so that's why I chose to abstain.
If you abstain, that's totally your choice. Nobody is telling you to abstain. And I just thought because you abstained last time, you were going to abstain again. And typically when you abstain, you're not commenting on the item as well. But if you don't want to abstain, you don't have to. It's entirely up to you. It's your choice.
No, I did this time. I'll get clarification from the city attorney and share it with the
Commissioner, I just want you to know that City of Laredo regularly has lawsuits in the 406th Judicial District Court, and that would be a conflict as well, but it still happens. And so I don't necessarily think that you have to abstain just because your brother happens to be an employee at a company. But you can talk to the city attorney about that.
I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, gentlemen, now we're going to move on to the next item. The next item that we have is the preliminary consideration of the replat of Lot 3A, Block 1, Killam Industrial Park, Unit 1, Lot 3B. The intent is commercial, and it's a dedication of right-of-way. Kirby.
Rafa, if you would like to take over.
Oh, absolutely. Very well. Next slide, please. The applicant is Killam Development Limited. The engineer of record is Crane Engineering. It's 2.0852 acres of land located east of FM 1472 and north of Killam Industrial Boulevard. The zoning is M1, proposed use commercial and dedication of right-of-way, and it's proposed one lot. This area can be found at the intersection of Mines and Killam Industrial. Aerial view, street view, the as platted and the proposed replat. Comments from staff. More comments from staff and the proposed motion.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question, Rafa. Is this in reference to that project that's coming up by the MPO to widen 1472?
It's part of the project. I do believe the engineer of record is on hold on the line to provide additional comments.
Okay. Let's listen to him. Let's see what he has to say.
We have Edward Garza from Crane Engineering.
All right. Eddie, go ahead.
Eddie.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Edward Garza with Crane Engineering for the record. The purpose of this replat is to do an additional right-of-way dedication along Killam Industrial to provide, to prepare for the widening of Killam Industrial on a project that is being sponsored by the Regional Mobility Authority, the RMA, and the City of Laredo. And we're also working in conjunction with the TxDOT, proposed widening of the Mines Road that goes further south and north, south of the Killam Industrial Boulevard. This is an RMA project, and the intent is to widen Killam. The need here is to also widen the right-of-way from 120 foot with an additional 10-foot right-of-way dedication to allow for the relocation of the existing utilities that are located along Killam Industrial, I'm sorry. So at this point, with staff comments, we have 7 comments from planning and 2 from engineering. We do concur with those comments at this point. We have been coordinating this project continuously with the city and with TxDOT, especially regarding access by the RMA engineer, HNTB, regarding accessibility. So there's been a lot of coordination already with TxDOT when it comes to access and with the city traffic engineer. And so some of this information was already provided in our initial submittal. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Mr. Garza?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. This is Beckelheimer, but this is a nice example of partnership that the RMA has partnered with the city of Laredo and with TxDOT, and they're sharing the costs, and it's brought the costs down, and this will be a major improvement to traffic flow in the area.
Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. Does anybody else have any concerns or any questions? If not, what are the wishes of the commission?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Beckelheimer seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody against? None heard, and motion carries. Next item is the reconsideration of the following preliminary plat. The
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
reconsideration of the replat lot 11 through 20, Block 2, Pinto Valle Subdivision Phase 1, and 17.34 acres of land out of 30-acre tract and 10-acre tract conveyed by deed into lots 11A, 12A, 13A, 14A, and 15A, Block 2, Pinto Valle Subdivision Phase 1. Kirby, who's going to make this presentation?
Rafa?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Mario Palos Garza, engineer of record Daniel Gomez, 40.49 acres located south of Pinto Valle Road and east of FM 1472. The zoning is M1, the proposed use is industrial, and it's 5 lots. General location, aerial view, street view, as platted, the proposed replat.
Can you explain a little bit here, Rafa?
Certainly. What they did is they reduced a little bit of the acreage, and they did align one of the lots to make it a little bit more of a better alignment along Anahuac. And that was the purpose of this resubmittal. These are the comments from planning and from engineering, and the proposed motion for the commission.
Okay. Is the engineer of record on the line?
Yes, Commission. Daniel Gomez is on the line. You may speak.
Good evening to all. This is Daniel Gomez, and I'm the engineer for record. And we concur with all of the comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Daniel Gomez from the commission? None heard. What are the wishes of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, this is Beckelheimer. I move to approve the item.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the consideration of the final plat. We have the final consideration of the plat of auto zone number 6021.
You're welcome. Take
Yes,
care.
sir.
Bye-bye. You heard everything?
Who will make this presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kirby, next slide, please. The applicant is Luis James. The engineer of record is Yan W. Lay. 1 acre tract located west of Concord Hills Boulevard and south of State Highway 359. The zoning is B3 and proposed 1 lot. Next slide, please. General location, aerial view, street view, proposed plat, and the motion is to approve the final plat.
All right. Do we hear a motion from the commission?
I move that we approve the final plat for the auto zone number 6021.
Hayes,
We have a second.
seconding Beckelheimer.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Motion carries. The next item, final consideration of the plat of R&W Ranch Subdivision, Phase 3. Intent is residential.
Overview, applicant Laredo Amanecer Homes, engineer of record Sherfy Engineering Company, 6.05 acres, located south of Lomas del Sur Boulevard and west of Ejido. The zoning is R1A and 40 proposed lots. General location, aerial view, street view, proposed plat. And motion to approve the final plat is the recommended motion.
All right. Do I have a motion from the commission to approve?
Motion to approve, Madam Vice.
Dueñas, second.
We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Dueñas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The last item that we have is consideration of the model subdivision compliance. This is the consideration of the model subdivision rules for the plat of Cuatro Vientos East, Ranch Subdivision Phase 3. The intent is residential. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, Beckelheimer.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
who made the motion and who second?
Stayes made the motion.
Beckelheimer, second.
Thank you.
Is anybody opposed? No. Thank you. All right, we have director's comments.
Yes, just want to say thank you, everybody, for your service. I know we had a few technical challenges today, and we will get together right after this and figure out how we can improve those for next time. We appreciate everybody's help in this meeting. We haven't been directed otherwise, but I anticipate that maybe in the next month or two, we might go back to meeting in person. But again, we're going to take our direction from City Council and the direction they give for boards and committees. But it is looking like we will transition back to that within the next, I would say, 1 or 2 months. And I don't know if this has been, I would be curious to hear from the commission if this has been.
Well, that's going to be difficult because I'm not going to come back until there's a vaccine. So.
I kind of agree with Raul, and I really like it, and I think the attendance of everybody, even though Commissioner Lugo is there hanging out in his unit probably, or his car, but I think the interaction has worked out better, and it's made us study up a little bit more ahead of time by doing it this way, and I think it's been better for everybody, for all around.
I think that's generally true. The biggest challenge, of course, is public input. It is very difficult to get the normal amount of public input that we get when we just have a limited number of call-in lines and staff, and then being able to get it on and then being able to hear you or participate in the meeting. So that's the biggest challenge. So like I said, we'll take our direction from council. I'm not sure where they're going to go, but I was just anticipating that within a month or two
I'll take my direction from the doctors and the scientists and from my health. And my daughter has underlying conditions, so I cannot afford to get COVID.
Well, whatever the case, we will certainly make provisions for everybody to participate, whether they have to be there physically or not. So if we do end up meeting in person at whatever time, and one of the commission doesn't feel comfortable doing that, we'll do our best to make provisions that you can call in, which is typically always an option. I know some of you in the past have been away on business, but offered to call in, and that's always an option.
Well, we never told Raul that because we liked it when he left, but it's all good.
I love you too.
Igualmente.
Finally, I just want to say that we don't, as staff, we know you don't always follow recommendations, but as was the case today, we entirely respect the decisions of the commission, and we feel just our responsibility to give you the best information possible, and try not to be biased, just to follow what the rules are. And so we'll continue to do that, but of course, always understand that this commission can make its own decision and should, or make a recommendation to council. So Thank you again very much, everyone, for your service. We appreciate it very much. You don't get paid for what you do. You volunteer your time, and it makes a big difference. So thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Second?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all very much. It was a good meeting.
Have a good evening.